Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of Holophase, part 51, Interlayer Handoff Discipline. We began with a simple truth. Before we can talk about anything, we must be able to compare patterns lawfully. This gave us the fourfold identity, what makes a pattern itself a cross change. We learned to measure without assuming time, to remember without storing the past, to model without confusing map and territory. We discovered that meaning, symbols, and language are not the patterns themselves, but are ways of pointing to them. And we built knowledge systems not as repositories of truth, but as living communities that maintain public claims. Now we arrive at the moment when all this richness must be protected from itself. 1. The danger we now face. We have built something beautiful together. Layer by layer, we constructed a way to talk about patterns that anyone can verify, regardless of their beliefs, their culture, or their language. We started with the most basic questions. How do we know when two things are the same pattern? How do we measure without smuggling in hidden assumptions? And we worked our way up to meaning, symbols, language, and finally, whole knowledge systems. But here is the danger we now face. The higher layers feel truer than the foundation. Think about this for a moment. Which feels more real to you, a mathematical equation or the meaning of a poem? Which carries more weight in daily life, a philosophical principle or the decision of an institution you trust? Which is more vivid, a raw sensory pattern or the story we tell about what it means? The higher layers, meaning, language, institutions, social agreements, feel deeper because they are closer to our lived experience. They pulse with human significance. They carry the weight of tradition, the authority of consensus, the warmth of shared understanding. And the foundational layer, pure pattern, bare structure, lawful invariance, sits quietly underneath. It doesn't demand attention, it doesn't comfort or inspire, it just is. This asymmetry creates a profound danger because the higher layers feel so true, so obvious, so right, they begin to leak backward. They begin to act as though they were part of the foundation itself. A meaning starts pretending to be a property of the pattern. An institution's decision starts masquerading as discovered truth. A social consensus starts rewriting what can be publicly certified. This is not corruption by falsehood, it is corruption by richness. The very vividness of higher layers threatens to overwhelm the quiet integrity of the lower ones. So we must build a firewall, not to imprison the higher layers, but to protect the foundation they depend on. Not to silence meaning, but to ensure that meaning doesn't silently rewrite what is structurally true. The three layers. Let us name the layers clearly so we always know what we are protecting. Phi 0, the pure pattern layer. This is the kitchen, the foundation. What can be publicly certified as a structure without importing meaning, social agreement, or institutional authority as hidden assumptions? Here live the things we can compare, measure, and verify, regardless of who we are or what we believe. Comparability between patterns, invariance under transformation, identity across change, persistence through time, trace legality, replayable structure. Phi 0 is austere. It doesn't care what things mean. It doesn't know about love or justice or beauty. It only knows what can be checked, rechecked, and publicly confirmed by anyone willing to do the work. Phi 1, the interpretive layer. This is the serving line, where structure acquires meaning, where patterns become symbols, where raw data becomes language. Here live the things that make patterns matter to us: meaning and significance, symbols and their references, Interpretation strategies, language and its rules, context sensitive reading, cultural framing. Phi 1 is where the bare pattern of ink on paper becomes a poem, where the waveform of sound becomes a declaration of love, where the arrangement of pixels becomes a photograph of your grandmother. Phi 2, the social layer. This is the dining area, the administration building, the community center, where knowledge systems develop, institutions form, and governance happens. Here live the things that organize us around patterns, knowledge systems and traditions, institutional roles and procedures, standards and protocols, archival and transmission systems, governance decisions, collective maintenance. Phi 2 is where science becomes a community, where law becomes a system, where education becomes an institution. Three layers, all real, all necessary, none interchangeable. And the most important rule of all, higher layers may annotate, but they may not alter. The meaning we attach to a pattern does not change the pattern. The institution's decision about a claim does not rewrite what was certified. The social consensus does not retroactively transform interpretation into structure. Meaning annotates, it does not alter. 3. The leakage problem, seen across scales. Let us watch this leakage happen at different scales of reality, because once you see the pattern, you see it everywhere. At the microscopic scale, a biologist observes a protein folding in a particular configuration. Under the microscope, it's just a shape, a sequence of twists and turns determined by physical laws. But the biologist calls it a misfolding. The word mis carries judgment. Something went wrong. The protein made a mistake. Now, here is the leakage. The judgment starts to feel like a property of the protein itself. We forget that misfolding is our interpretation, not the protein's essence. Maybe this configuration serves a function we haven't discovered yet. Maybe it's not a mistake at all. But the word has leaked backward and now colors everything we see. At the human scale, a teacher tells a young student, "You're not good at math." This is an interpretation, a judgment about performance at a particular moment under particular conditions with particular teaching methods. But the student internalizes it. Soon they approach every math problem through this lens. Their heart races, their mind goes blank, they avoid numbers. The interpretation has leaked backward and become part of their identity, their pattern of being in the world. The teacher's words did not change the student's neural structure directly, but the student's belief about themselves rewired everything that followed. At the cosmic scale, astronomers observe patterns in the cosmic microwave background radiation, faint echoes of the early universe. They interpret these patterns as evidence of inflation, a particular theory about what happened moments after the Big Bang. This interpretation becomes so widely accepted that textbooks start saying inflation happened. Graduate students are taught it as fact. Research grants are written assuming it. But the pattern itself is just radiation with certain properties. The interpretation has leaked backward and become treated as a structure. If future evidence challenges inflation theory, we will have to untangle not just the science, but decades of institutional weight pretending to be pure discovery. The common thread. In every case, something real happens at the leakage. The richness of the higher layer overwhelms the quietness of the lower one. Meaning feels more vivid than measurement. Judgment feels more urgent than description. Institution feels more authoritative than evidence, so we forget which is which. The firewall we build is not against the higher layers, it is against this forgetting. What the lawful handoff requires. Now we come to the practical heart of this part, We cannot prevent movement between layers. We shouldn't try. Science needs meaning. Knowledge needs institutions. Communities need shared understanding. But we can require that every movement be declared. Think of it like crossing an international border. You don't just wander across. You present yourself at a checkpoint. You show your passport. You declare what you're carrying. You answer questions. Sometimes you're refused entry. This isn't bureaucracy for its own sake. It's how nations maintain integrity while allowing lawful travel. Every handoff between layers must include 7 declarations: source layer and target layer. Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Phi 0 to Phi 1, Phi 1 to Phi 2, something else? Name it. True translation rule. How exactly does the pattern map from one layer to the other? What rule connects the structure to its interpretation? Be explicit. 3. Preserved invariants. What survives the crossing unchanged? What properties must remain stable for this handoff to be meaningful? 4. Losses and discards. What gets left behind? Every translation loses something. Name what you're sacrificing. 5. Uncertainty propagation. How does uncertainty travel? It doesn't disappear just because you move layers. Show how it carries over. 6. Refusal conditions. When is this handoff not allowed? What triggers a no? These must be declared in advance. 7. Interface honesty declaration. A statement that this handoff follows the rules, that it doesn't smuggle forbidden assumptions as hidden defaults. 7 declarations, not optional, not negotiable. The price of lawful movement between worlds. The 5. The handoff honesty principle. Let us state this clearly. Handoffs extend lawful infrastructure. They may not reintroduce forbidden primitives as hidden defaults. A bridge between layers must be an honest bridge, not a smuggling route. What does this mean in practice? At Phi 0, we do not assume time as a primitive. Time emerges from patterns of change. A handoff from Phi 0 cannot smuggle time back in as if it were always there. At Phi 0, we do not assume meaning. Meaning emerges from interpretation. A handoff cannot treat meaning as if it were a property of the structure itself. At Phi 1, we do not assume institutional authority. Authority emerges from social agreement. A handoff cannot treat an institution's decision as if it were discovered truth. The bridge must be transparent. We must see what crosses and what doesn't. We must see what assumptions are being added and what are being left behind. A hidden default is just smuggling by another name. 6. The most important protection: no reverse leakage. Now we arrive at the heart of the firewall. Meaning-bearing annotations may influence legality only after explicit handoff into governed, interpretive, or social layers. No reverse leakage into Phi 0. Let us say this simpler. Meaning annotates. It does not alter. The interpretation we attach to a pattern does not change the pattern. The institution's classification does not rewrite what was measured. The social consensus does not retroactively transform a guess into a fact. This seems obvious when stated boldly, but watch how easily we forget. A hospital classifies a blood test result as positive for disease X. Soon, the result itself is called a positive. The interpretation has become the name. The name has become the thing. A scientific community reaches consensus that a particular signal indicates a new particle. Soon, textbooks say the particle was discovered. The interpretation has leaked backward and become treated as structure. A legal system decides that a document means something specific. Soon, the meaning is treated as inherent in the document itself, not as an interpretation imposed by law. This is reverse leakage. It is the most common corruption in all human knowledge systems, and it must be blocked. Not because meaning is unimportant, because meaning is so important that it must not be allowed to masquerade as a structure. When meaning pretends to be structure, we lose the ability to question it. We lose the ability to see that it is meaning, not structure. We become trapped in our own interpretations, unable to reach the patterns they interpret. 7. The hierarchy. Essence, constitution, companion. One more protection must be installed: the ordering of how we build and maintain the science itself. There are three levels to any healthy knowledge system: essence, what the science is about; the subject matter itself, in our case, patterns, comparability, invariance, identity, transformation. This is the foundational reality we study. Constitution, the rules that determine when a claim about essence is lawful. The gates, the certifications, the publicness requirements, the handoff disciplines. This is how we know we're doing the science correctly. Companion pack, the tools, procedures, institutions, and practices that implement the Constitution. The laboratories, the peer review systems, the educational programs, the audit mechanisms. These three must remain in strict order: essence, constitution, companion, never the reverse. Why? Because the companion pack, our tools and procedures, exists to serve the Constitution, our rules for lawful claims, which exists to help us discover essence, what is actually real. When this order inverts, corruption follows. The procedure becomes more important than what it serves. The tool becomes the master. The institution starts defining reality rather than helping us discover it. We have all seen this: the bureaucracy that forgets its purpose, the protocol that becomes an end in itself, the institution that starts believing its own publicity. That is procedure first inversion, and it is blocked by holding the hierarchy in place. What this part installs. Let us gather what we have built together in this part. The layer architecture: Phi 0, pure pattern; Phi 1, interpretive; Phi 2, social. Clear definitions, clear distinctions, clear relationships. The handoff contract. 7 required declarations for any movement between layers: source, target, translation rule, preserved invariance, losses, uncertainty propagation, refusal conditions. The non-leakage firewall. Higher layers may annotate but may not alter. No reverse leakage from meaning to structure, from institution to evidence, from consensus to certification. The no reverse leakage gate, specifically blocking the most common corruption, meaning pretending to be structure. The hierarchy order: essence, constitution, companion, protecting against procedure first inversion. The refusal grounds: clear conditions under which a handoff must be rejected, layer not declared, translation rule absent, losses hidden, uncertainty ignored, refusal conditions missing, higher semantics altering lower verdicts. 9. Why this matters: the quiet layer protected. There is something tender about this part, though it wears the armor of discipline. The foundational layer, pure pattern, bare structure, lawful invariance, is quiet. It does not shout. It does not seduce. It does not comfort or inspire. It simply sits there, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be checked, waiting to be confirmed or falsified by anyone willing to do the work. The higher layers, meaning, language, institutions, are loud. They pulse with human significance. They carry stories and emotions and loyalties. They feel like home. And because they feel like home, we are always tempted to let them rewrite the foundation, to let our meanings become the structure, to let our institutions become the truth, to let our consensus become the reality. This part says no. Not because the higher layers are bad, because they are so good, so rich, so vivid that they will overwhelm the quiet layer if we do not protect it. And if the quiet layer is overwhelmed, the higher layers lose their anchor. They float free, untethered from anything that can be publicly checked, publicly verified, publicly confirmed by anyone willing to do the work. We protect the quiet layer not despite the richness of the higher layers, but because of it. The richness depends on the quietness. The meaning depends on the structure. The institution depends on the evidence. So we build the firewall. We install the handoff discipline. We require declarations. We block reverse leakage, not to imprison meaning, but to give it solid ground to stand on. 10. Hand off to what comes next. Now that we have built the doors between layers, with honest handoffs and clear rules, we face a new question. What about time? What happens when a handoff happens today and then tomorrow someone develops a new interpretation? Can that new interpretation reach back and change what was certified yesterday? What about next year when a new institution forms and makes different decisions? Can those decisions retroactively alter what was established as lawful pattern? This is the problem of non retroactivity. The past must be protected from the future's reinterpretations. Not because the future is wrong, but because without this protection, nothing is stable. Every certification becomes provisional on whatever meanings later arise. Every discovery becomes hostage to tomorrow's institutions. So we need a temporal firewall. Rules that prevent later layers from reaching back and rewriting earlier certifications. Rules that honor the irreversible arrow of certification even as meaning and institutions evolve. That is where we go next. Non-retroactivity will install this temporal protection. It will ensure that what has been certified stays certified, regardless of later interpretations or institutional changes. It will lock the past against the future's rewriting. Because if time itself becomes a smuggler, nothing is safe. Always. Peace be upon you.